Hey, hey, good evening, good evening. How's everybody doing? It is Wednesday, February 13th. It is Valentine's Day Eve, even though I don't put too much stock in Valentine's Day. And if you don't have anyone to spend Valentine's Day with, I hope you don't put too much stock in it. And even if you do, please don't put too much emphasis on a day that at the end of the day, just because someone sends you flowers or candy, that doesn't mean that all is well and vice versa. So hope everyone's good. As you know, tonight we're having the first Truth Talk that we've had since The Truth About Men is out. You can get it right now. You can order it right now. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. As many of you know, I've been traveling the country on the Truth Tour. I was in Atlanta. I was in New York last week. I was in Houston over the weekend. Before that, I was in Chicago. I just came back to LA, and now I'm getting ready to head tomorrow with the missus to Atlanta for a couple days. So I'm really excited about this. I see you. I see you got the digital and the hard copy. This book is tearing it up. What's up, Pastor Kelly, my brother? This truth is what we need. And tonight, I'm so excited that we have my dear friends, Terry and Rebecca Cruz. I mean, they are just a powerful, dynamic couple. Everybody, knows, obviously who Terry is and his story. And, he and Rebecca have been so honest and transparent, and as a result have transformed many, many lives. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Terry and Rebecca. We're going to get into a truth talk. Y'all know how we do it. Here we go. There we go. All right. See if technology work. Y'all know how he's at the beginning of these truth talk. Yo, what's going on, yo? How we doing? Man, how was your day? I know you were working all day.
Yeah, man, but it's okay. Listen, I wouldn't have missed this for the world, man. I've been peeping your book, man. The Truth About Men is absolutely incredible. I gotta just give you all the props in the world, man.
Thank you.
I was tripping at how, you said, hey, you were trying to avoid writing this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Man, I didn't want to do it. But God had another plan.
So needed. And again, I'm just blessed, man. I mean, you just were hitting all the topics just right, man. And I really just want to get into it with you, man. And let's talk. I'm glad that Rebecca's here.
I want to give you kudos, DeVon, because you are really blazing a trail for your generation in the area of sexual purity. I love the weight. Bought it for my daughters.
Amen.
I have a boy. He is a little young to read it, but we're going to send him on the Truth About Men journey with Dad.
I'm going to get him your book. I'm going to have the audio book for him. So
dope. How old is he now?
He's 13.
Right.
And I just have to tell you, thank you for taking a message that's not new, but putting it in a new format for a new generation. It's really, really powerful. And we're honored. We love you and support you, but we're honored to be part of this talk tonight.
Oh, wow. It's truly, an honor to have you all. I look up to you both. You've been such an inspiration, and your friendship has meant so much to me and Megan over the years. And, I put you in the book. So I want to just read this section in terms of kicking us off. I want to read this section from the book where I mentioned you both and mentioned Terry, what you talked about. And then I want to talk about a conversation we had in the premiere as a way to get into our talk tonight. So I talk about, accepting the dog. And for those of you who don't know, my theory and thesis in terms of what's wrong with us as men and what's going on with the culture is men have a lust problem. And until we, master the dog, I call lust the dog, I call love the master. Love is sacrifice. Love is selflessness. Lust is selfish. And until we as men master the dog, we will not become the men we were called to be. We have to put love in control of lust. And so here's what I wrote on page 80 of The Truth About Men. Actor and activist Terry Crews and his amazing wife, Rebecca, are good friends of mine. He shared with me the same revelation he shared with the public a few years ago. Pornography almost ruined his life and his marriage.
He said, pornography really, really messed up my life. He then went on Facebook in a series of videos, video posts to reveal how badly it messed him up. Some people say, hey man, you can't really be addicted to pornography, but I'm going to tell you something. If day turns into night and you're still watching, you probably have a problem. And that was me. It changes the way you think about people. People become objects. People become body parts. They become things to be used rather than people to be loved. It affected everything. My wife was literally like, I don't know you anymore. I'm out of here. I had to change. I literally had to go to rehab for it. Every time I watched it, I was walled off. It was like another brick that came between me and my wife. And the truth is, everything you need for intimacy is in your partner. I found that to be so powerful. And I remember we were at a premiere before the premiere started, and the three of us got into this conversation. Terry, you were sharing these things with me, and Rebecca, you were there, and I was blown away. Because it's very rare that we have honest, truthful conversations. And so I just want to just take us back to this moment. Terry, what led you down this path where this became an issue for you? And then at what point did Rebecca find out about it? And then Rebecca, how did you handle it once you found out what was going on?
Basically Rebecca left me.
Deep.
And, there were some things that I never told her about. That happened years earlier. I was on a movie, my first movie I ever did. I was up in Vancouver, and I went to a massage parlor, and I was unfaithful. But this had come through years of pornography use, like stuff that she didn't know. She never had a clue. I mean, it was my dirty little secret. That's actually what I called the series of videos that I put on Facebook. Called Dirty Little Secret. And, it was a problem, ever since I was probably like 9 when I was exposed to pornography.
Wow.
And I grew up in a home my father was an alcoholic.
Yeah, mine too.
He was addicted to alcohol, but my mother was addicted to religion. And it was a very strict lifestyle where we couldn't dance, we couldn't go to movies, we couldn't play sports, we couldn't do that. And one thing, once I went to rehab, one thing they told me is that these very strict religious upbringings are basically that's like the boilerplate, like that's pornography addiction starts there. Because
breeding ground for rebelliousness, because the law brings death. The minute you tell someone they can't do something, that's what they want to do.
But it was one thing you mentioned in your book, it was about suppression. You know what I mean? And it was one of those things where this is why people who are political or even religious leaders, and then they find they have a whole nother life. They have a whole double life. And let me say, I had a double life where I just felt like, okay, as long as I keep the image up, then, it'll be okay. As long as the image is fine, we'll be fine. Because apparently everybody's like this. And I couldn't have been more wrong, man.
And I wanted to add to that many people would say, well, how were you married for 20 years and you didn't know? Well, I have a husband who travels a lot. And so with the advent of the internet, it was very easy for him to be on a laptop or computer away from home on the set. So Terry didn't sit at the computer at home and watch porn. And though there were times that I had, every woman has intuition, that I would challenge him or question him or say, what's going on with you? Like, he was angry a lot. I used to joke that though he never took a drink, he was like a dry drunk. He had all the characteristics of an alcoholic. Anger, blaming, excuse making. He was kind of taking all his frustrations out on the family. So when I confronted my husband, it was out of this deep abiding sense that there was something really, really deeply wrong with our marriage. And I couldn't put a finger on it. But, as a woman of God, I knew God was showing me there was something very profoundly wrong. We talk about like sixth sense or ESP or discernment.
Yep, y'all have
I had a very strong sense of discernment that something very cataclysmic was about to happen to me. And I said to God, I said, what are you taking me through, Lord? He said, you're going to pass through the valley of the shadow of death. And I said, what? Am I sick, Lord? What's wrong? I said, am I going to die? He said, no, but you're going to wish you had. And I was like, oh, no.
Lord,
you
no, take
speak
this
to
thorn
me.
from me.
Yes, really, DeVon. And I sat down with my spouse and began to hammer him with questions. And I kept getting the sense that I just was about to really go through something awful. And on the other side of the fence, he was on the other side of the country in a hotel room in New York. I'm in LA. And he's having his own like countdown to midnight with Jesus himself, because the Lord was waking him up in the night saying, you need to tell her the truth, tell her the truth. And it was almost Scrooge-like. He said that he woke up right at midnight. Then he woke up right at 1, right at 2, right at 3 on the dot. And God would say, tell her, and he'd say no. And then he'd wake up again at 4, at 5 a.m. And finally, I called him in the morning. And I was like, what don't I know about you? What don't I know about you? Screaming at him, like the wrath of God was on me to challenge my spouse in a kind of a prophetic way. And then he just blurted it out. And he started to tell me what happened, with he went going to the massage parlor. And I said, what else is there? What else is there? And he started to just pour out this litany of things that were like, strip clubs, or like the computer, or, even like maybe a friend or someone he was a little too nice to, that even though maybe there wasn't infidelity, there was emotional affair. There was this kind of boundaryless way of carrying himself, but he prided himself, well, at least I'm not really cheating.
Right.
I'm not really, I don't have women in every town kind of thing. But he was unfaithful really from a very spiritual place, even though he would say he only had, the incident there that he only counted that, but he was just, he wasn't whole, and he wasn't true to himself and true to what he claimed he believed. Because when I married him, we were in church together. I'm all like, oh, he's a godly man. And he was a very good fake, is what he was.
Well, I
so many.
want to say this is that, what's wild is that men need intimacy. That's
Absolutely.
what we're looking for. We're looking for intimacy. And what intimacy is, literally, is into me see. You want someone who literally sees everything, knows everything about you, and loves you regardless. But here's the thing. And in masculinity, and the way the world is built right now, we want to be strong. So you never show her the real you. You don't show her the thoughts, the background. So I kept building this image, and the image was more important than who I was. And like I said, it was fake. It was a double life. But I just felt like that's the way to do it. Like, you literally are like, well, everybody's doing this. So, and this is another thing. I'm like, I'm very successful. And, because you feel like, okay, I'm making money. I'm I didn't leave. I leave the family. I'm here.
Right. You're still there. You're
doing
justifying
my thing. And, and I loved her. But the problem is, it's just like you said with the dog, how you feed, when you feed that part of your life, it's there, and it grows, and it's getting stronger. And the thing was, what was so wild is because is that, the intimacy thing, every time you use pornography, it kills intimacy. So you're farther away from what you need. It's like, what it's like? It's like being on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and you need water, and you're drinking salt water. And it's killing you. It's killing you
one drink at a time.
And you are slowly losing. I mean, all of a sudden, they know, it's going to kill you, but you drink it anyway. And let me tell you, the deal is, over these course of these years, it had reached we weren't close. And my wife could tell. She could tell all kind of things. Like, and I remember finally, when I was in that room, which was we call D-Day, I was literally like, man, if you don't tell her, like there was a boy, it was literally like the voice of God. It said, hey, if you don't tell her everything, I'm going to leave you. Now, I was like, wait a minute, what are you saying? Like, well, and I felt like it was no going back. Like you would be fake forever. Like you would just, and of course, I knew the marriage was going to dissolve. I mean, I was at that point where I knew that this is unsustainable. It was at the point where, wow. And it was the darkest, I mean, loneliness I ever felt. And so when she called me that morning, I had been denied, like, you know, just, and I would start fights in order to get out of situations and
start fights with her
about things.
He had become very unbearable to live with it by this time, DeVon. He was always angry. I say that he had every kind of holic except the alcohol. He was a workaholic. He was an alcoholic. He was a spendaholic. He was a thrill seeker. It was like living with someone who had no moorings. And, you know, 20 years in and 5 children, I was done. I was lonely. I was lacking spiritual companionship. I was lacking really true intimacy, like he said. One thing, and I'm sure this is a little more candid than people get on Instagram, but when you're dealing with pornography, you don't have a realistic perception of what true lovemaking is. And there was even this wall between us there where I was like, are you here? Like, do you see me in this moment? Are you listening or really responding to me? Or are you acting out some fantasy in your head? So even though we're supposed to be together, it's like we weren't together. It was very lonely and very left me feeling empty, left me feeling unloved. And the funny thing about this whole situation was that I had spent a period of time in college, maybe 6 to 8 months, that I believe that I suffered from like a sex addiction where though I had had this Christian morals all through high school and the first part of college, I got really hurt by somebody that I was dating. And I felt like I kind of rebelled, you know, against everything I've been taught. So for about 6 months, I described myself as promiscuous. Now, I look back on that, and there are other people who would say, oh, that was nothing. But to me, it was a very big breakdown of what I had promised myself I would be.
Sure.
But I can recall that what I was trying to do was fill something in my heart. There was this hurt there. And so to a degree, I understood the power of that kind of addiction. I understood the power of trying to meet this need in this wrong way. And the funny thing is, I tremendously loved my husband. I was very committed to him, very sold out to him, to being his wife and his partner, sold out to his dreams. I mean, there was nobody really, I can say proudly, more committed to his future than I was.
Nobody.
And that's really true. That was a God ordained thing. I believe the Lord brought us together when we met each other. He was the answer to my prayers. So to get 20 years in and go, this is who you are. I was mad at God. I was mad at him.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this, I'm done.
This is not what I prayed for. This is not what I have.
What I asked for. And I said, Lord, I'm going to have me a Tyler Perry ending. I want a new man and a new car. And we going to drive by while he cries in his beer over the woman he did wrong. Whoopsie-doo, you know. But that is not what God said. God said to me, you're going to have a new man. And I said, okay, Lord. He said, but it's going to be the old one reborn. And my husband is really, truly reborn.
Now, let me ask you this, because I want to talk about the breakthrough that happened that night that led to the rebirth. But for those that are struggling, that have not gotten to their breakthrough yet relative to this issue, what in those moments when you were engaging or indulging, you know, in pornography, in those moments, what was it fulfilling? You know, what made it so addictive? Because, you know, I was on the Breakfast Club last week. And, you know, did a whole interview, you know, the interview's got a lot of response. But one of the things they asked me about was pornography. And I talked about, you know, how pornography, you know, in my analogy of the dog versus the master, I would say that, you know, anything that's virtuous is soul food, which feeds the master. Anything that is vice is dog food, it feeds the dog. And I put pornography in the dog food category. And I, you know, say, hey, you got to be very careful with that, even if you're in a relationship or a marriage. And I got a lot of pushback for that. A lot of people say, oh, what are you talking about? Especially in a marriage, especially in a relationship. What do you mean? So I just want you to touch on, you know, what that was fulfilling and why it ultimately became so dangerous.
Wow. Well, the thing is that, you know, you're looking at what was, for me, the appeal of pornography was numbing. It was a numbing thing. It was like anytime I had stress, anytime I felt, you know, uptight or upset or whatever, it was kind of like it would take me away. Just like a drug. It was just like crack. It was just like, you know, any kind of thing. You just, all of a sudden, all your problems go away, and but you're believing a lie. And this is what I mean, is that these images, these women who are lying to you, because it's all false.
They're actresses, right?
Right. And exactly, it's not real. None of this stuff is real. But the problem is that slowly but surely, you begin to objectify human beings, and human beings become body parts for real. They don't. They lose their humanity, and this is the big thing for me. What happens is, and this is the problem with probably, you know, any sin, anything that you know you need to get out of your life, is when you become a little bit more human than someone else. This happens when you're talking about in the race. There are white people who feel they're a little bit more human than black people, and this is where supremacy comes from. This is where anything. I believe, because I was a man, that I was more valuable than all the women in my life. There was no equality. It was just, I'm a man. This is what I do. Right. This is what, and pornography endorses that. It gives you that. It says that people are usable. It says that people are, you know, and this is the thing, because it would change your mindset about everyone walking around. It was a wild thing, because people became objects at work. And I'm not talking sexually. It was just more, I'm above you, so you better do what I say. You better do what I do. You know,
sure.
You tend to abuse all your relationships, and it literally permeates your life. And I have to say, you know, it never satisfied. This is the real deal, because I remember this. When I say day turned into night, you could spend 3 hours. What used to be an hour on pornography turned into 3 hours, turned into 5 hours, turned into 8 hours, where you're like, I'm spending 3 hours looking for an image. And you know, you start to realize, man, I've wasted my day. I've wasted my life. It's no use. It's, you know what, it's almost like people who complain about not going after their dreams, but after work they go and spend 8 hours in the bar.
Right, and then it's like, well, there's no excuse, right? You can't complain if you're wasting your time.
It was literally sapping my. And this is another thing people have to remember, is that sexual energy is creative energy.
Yes,
it's the
talk about that in the book.
Thing. It's this, yes, and let me tell you something. When the energy that you should be putting into creating, pornography robs you of your creativity.
Right.
It actually robs you of ideas, of things that you can actually do to improve your life, to make your life better. It keeps you in a numbed out state. It is no different than the crack house, and all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're gone, and you just wasted so much time, so much energy. You never get time back, ever.
Right.
Now, when you bring that into the relationship, this is what happens. Because, for one, you know, for men, and people say, well, you know, people are the same. But I'm going to tell you, men and women are very, very different. We operate very
1,000%. Absolutely.
It's the truth.
Absolutely.
And men react to pornography much differently than women do.
And I want to jump in there as a woman who didn't have an addiction to porn, but I've seen porn. And one of the things that I always find when I've seen it is the automatic eye roll of the women in the room, because the objectification of the women in porn, the scenery is written by men. So it's written toward a fantasy. It's written toward this ideal who, you know, she's always ready. She's always turned on. She likes everything you do, which a lot of things they depict in the films, I can guarantee you I would not want someone to do to me.
Can I add to something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you know, you got to understand, in real life, a woman's no means no. But in pornography, no means yes. Every time.
Ooh, right.
Every
wow, that's
time.
deep. That's
you,
deep.
you do not have a porn movie that it starts out with her going, no, 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 and always ends up in yes. It's a rape training kit in a lot of ways. And you're talking about, you know, this is where, and there's a big disconnect, because now you've lost all signals. You've lost how to even read what a woman is saying. Because if you have a lot of pornography in your life, you don't even have, this is what happened to me. It was like I was turning off when I was trying to connect with my wife, because there is no intimacy there. It literally puts a brick there. And I know a lot of people, again, who feel like, well, it spices up things, and it feels like, you know, all of a sudden it can be great. But this is the deal. Everything that's bad for you is great in the beginning. That's
there you go. Yep.
The first drink you've ever had.
Oh man, yeah, it's all good.
Man, I can tell you, it was fantastic, but it has a price to be paid later on, and it's horrible in the end. Any drug addict will tell you, any person will tell you, that first hit was amazing, and then it always has diminishing returns, and that's what happened with me. I was done. Like, I was so done. And I remember when I did tell my wife all the stuff, and I thought, oh wow, okay, well, you know, now we're good. We can get, you know, now we can get back. She was like, this is it. I'm done. I'm out. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Okay, this is good though. But because I talk about this in the book, and I'm going to get to this point, but I want to hear, Rebecca, why? Because most women, in my opinion, the moment their husband comes clean, they would say, okay, honey, all right, I didn't like that you did that, but since you've come clean, let's work through it, but I'm going to be with you. Why did you say, hey, I'm out at that point?
Well, one thing to remember, I had told my husband, because I watched my dad and my stepdad cheat on my mother. I had always told my husband that if he ever cheated on me, I'd leave him. Because that was the one thing I said I would never tolerate in my marriage. I was not going to be that woman that just forgave and took back and worked it out. I just thought it was disrespectful to the marriage. And truthfully, I thought, if I can be faithful, so can you. I get plenty of opportunities. I get plenty of men coming at me. You know, I work with musicians. I have plenty of attractive people around me. And if I can make a decision about how I handle my emotions and my sexual energy, so can you. And I knew what Jesus's words were to his followers about what goes on in the heart, you know, is just as sinful as what goes on in your actions. And I had practiced a great amount of discipline to keep myself pure. I was lonely. My husband was away. So I held him to the same standard I held myself to. And knowing that I had a husband who loved to kind of, in a way, blame everybody else for his problems and not really be responsible. And he was charming. He was manipulative. Just everything in me. And I feel like God told me to throw him out. There was just there was a deep sense that he needed to really, like, not get away with this.
You know,
and it was a strong, like, I will take care of you. I will provide for you. Throw him out. And I said, we're done.
Whoa.
And I hung up the phone, like, get ready to see your kids on the weekend. Click, click.
Let me tell you, you know what? And DeVon, I needed that.
Wow. Yeah. Yes.
I needed it. Because I'm going to tell you this, first of all, and I said this before, I said this at a conference, and I'm going to continue to say this. You know, a lot of apologies are really hit and runs. You know,
Definitely.
Yeah.
You're
when
1000% right.
a lot of times lately people go, I'm sorry. Now let's go back. Now everything's supposed to be ready. You know, you're supposed to be, supposed to be fine, right?
Cheap grace.
But what I'm saying is, it's almost like hitting someone with a car, getting out of the car, going, hey, I'm sorry, and then getting back in the car and riding away. But you cannot have an apology without accountability. I had to be accountable. I had to be held accountable. Accountability.
No apology without
is one
accountability.
of
I
my
love it.
biggest values. It's a word that just keeps it just keeps reverberating through my life. It's about accountability. Like, you have to pay. I had to understand what this cost me. I had to finally see the price of what this is. I had to finally pay it. And that meant totally, I had a house that was standing that I needed to totally destroy and rebuild from the ground up. And I mean, from the ground up, And
I want to say this too, DeVon, that this idea that the apology is enough is a very American idea of Christianity. We must remember that back when God spoke to Adam and Eve and he confronted them when they had sinned, they came clean eventually, but they still had a consequence. And though he threw them out of the garden, he did at least give them an opportunity to redeem themselves later. But he told them, in the day you eat, you'll die. And he would not have been righteous to not keep his word. And I really felt that God told me that you need to let him squirm. And he said to me, if he repents, we'll see what'll happen. He said, but right now it's up to him. And it was like a very dark night of the soul for us for quite a while.
Yeah.
And when you came home, Terry, had she left?
Oh no! What happened is I was gone. I mean, I was gone for a while. I was working.
Oh, I see.
On location, the whole thing.
Yeah,
but
I told him don't come home.
Yeah, that was the whole point. I was in New York. She was in LA. She was like, "Don't come back." And let me tell you, man, I literally came home, grabbed my stuff, and went to rehab. And it was recommended, this rehab for sex addiction. It was in Phoenix, Arizona. And let me tell you something. I went in there and I was like, this ain't me. This is crazy. I was like, oh man, maybe I'm going too far. You know what I mean? You're like, I'm just a guy. Man, I got in there the first day. I was like, oh my God, this is me. Oh my God, these guys know, they're reading my mail. And I'm gonna tell you, man, we went through such a rebuilding. Now, let me tell you, it was hard.
Well, first it was a tearing down.
When I say tearing down,
tearing down that old idea of manhood, who you thought you were, all that.
Well, we actually went on a 90-day sex fast as a married couple.
Wow.
We had to get rid. I was willing to do anything it took to rebuild this marriage. And what was wild is that we did the first year, we went 75 days. We could only we couldn't go the whole 90 days. And so you know what I did? I said, we're doing it again. We're going to do it again. So we went.
That's Terry Crews. He's like, we have to win this.
No. But you know, this is the deal, DeVon. Once you know how far off you are, it's no different. It's almost like, you're walking and you think you're going north, but you've been going south the whole time. So I was like, anything I could do to get back north. You know what I mean? Like, because I kept being, all these things that were wrong with me, all the things that I had believed, because you know what? I had believed lies, man. I had believed lies about masculinity, lies about what it took to be a man, lies about, about sharing, about intimacy, about what this
communication,
thing was,
all of it
was and her role.
Everything.
Because also his father had abused his mother.
Right.
So there was
very
physical abuse, very violent home. And though he was a Christian, he had internalized a lot of very domineering, controlling, I'm above you. And there was emotional abuse. There was financial abuse. And then the church didn't help, because the church was telling me to submit. The church was telling me to just pray.
We're gonna
you know,
get to
not
that.
to, I mean, even though there was like, yes, you can confront him, but nobody ever, they discouraged me from leaving him. There was a lot of putting up with a lot of things.
Just endure it. You know, it's okay.
And I look back at it now like it was a lot of BS, you know, and well-meaning, I want to say that, well-meaning, but under-informed people about what a good consequence would have done to my husband, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I
go ahead.
Oh no, wait, no, you got it.
No, I was just saying, I was so far off. I was toxic. You know, and a lot of people want to, they hear the phrase toxic masculinity and they feel like, oh boy, you know, what does that mean? This is just a word that's being used politically now. But what I'm saying is, when I say toxic, man, it's literally, it's like you have a restaurant and you say, hey, anybody in here must wash their, you know, you have it in the sign in the bathroom. It says everybody here must wash their hands. And all the employees have to wash their hands before they go back to work. But the boss goes in that bathroom and he never washes his hands.
Oh, what a good analogy.
And so everybody notices it. They notice it. And everybody, all the workers go to the manager and say, hey, you got to go talk to the boss because he's not washing his hands. Because the boss comes in, he's touching the salmon. He's messing around with the steak. He's got his hands in the salad. And everybody's like, no, he's not washing his hands. So the manager goes over to him and says, hey, I'm sorry, sir. We noticed you're not washing your hands. We know that's a rule. And I just want to bring it up to you. And the boss says, fine. Thank you very much. You're fired. So once he fires the guy, everybody knows that's the way. Now we can't say nothing.
That's right.
And what happens is the restaurant all of a sudden goes down. All the employees tell people not to eat there because they know this dude don't wash his hands. And the restaurant closes down. And the boss blames the employees. It's toxic. This is
that's a good example. That is
good. That was me, DeVon.
Wow.
That was me. I was that guy. It was my way or the highway. I could never admit when I was wrong. I used to
joke that we went 20 years with no apology. I would be like, how do you sleep at night? I'm like, you have no conscience.
20 years with no apology. Wow.
You know, with the rules of a man, in manhood, if you got the strongest bench press, you say the rule. You get to say what's going on. If you're making all the money, you get to call it. It's your way or the highway. And dude, it was a mess. It was awful. And I'm gonna tell you, man, I remember weeping. I was on my knees weeping, probably for 2 weeks straight. I mean, just because once you see yourself as you truly are, I said, I'm never going back. I'm never going back.
And I want to tell you, DeVon, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, did you see was this 2 week period while you were still in rehab?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Were you going through this when you were crying like that, while you were still in rehab, when you really got a chance to see yourself? That was during rehab?
Yes.
And even after rehab, DeVon, for the next probably 2 or 3 years, he cried all the time. Wow. I will tell you that in the first 20 years, I rarely saw my husband cry. We lost children. I lost a baby 6 months into my pregnancy. My husband didn't cry. I never saw my husband cry. And he cried like once a week probably for the next 3 years because he was seeing so many things about himself, seeing truth, seeing revelation. I will confess, I was doubtful initially because my husband had been so toxic. I was confident he was not going to change. And I'm a preacher of the gospel. And I know God had changed my life. I've seen God change other people's lives, but I was convinced my husband was the devil from hell for a while. And I said,
wow.
I said, you are a hard rock. And if you change, I'd be really shocked. And he did. Wow. So it took me 2 or 3 years to believe it, I mean, I watched him walk through transformative experiences, from therapy to God moments with him and his Bible, to coming and apologizing over things he said to me years before that God showed him was wrong, you know. And I'm like looking at him like, who are you? Like, I don't even recognize this person. You know, I was doubtful. I was unbelieving. I was shell shocked. And yet, knowing that he would go to what I thought were astronomical lengths to save our family.
Yeah.
All I can say is that I think I finally saw, despite all the problems we had and despite his just wicked nature to me, I was just like,
Sure.
how can you be so evil sometimes? That he was profoundly wounded. And I always find every dog is a wounded man. And behind that wounded man is a wounded child.
Right. That's
And
so true.
And
so
so
true.
much stuff we say, well, I'm not taking this and I'm not taking that. And these men better do right or get left. You know, we're very harsh. But God told me, he said, Rebecca, walk a mile in his shoes. Walk a mile in the shoes he lived in. And I began to weep and experience true, what I call intercession of praying for him, but being inside the life of a boy from Flint who watched his father abuse his mother since he was 4 or 5 years old, who watched his father passed out drunk every day on the floor and would step over him to go play with his Hot Wheels. I just could not fathom the amount of emotional disconnect that was inside this sweet guy that I met at my church. I had no idea really how messed up he was, because he was such a sweet person. He was a nice guy. He had a good heart. He had a big dream. He loved God, but he had so many layers to this kind. Yeah. And I was too. I always say if I had been a healthier person, I would have left him a long time ago. I was just broken enough that I put up with a lot because I saw him as this broken person. I saw him as a guy who just didn't get the love he needed when he was younger. And so I felt compassion. Now, there was some codependence there now, you know, looking back, I see that. But but God was with me. And and watching this journey, it made me say, you know, I don't know that I could live with myself if I preach a gospel I don't practice.
Deep. So true.
Yeah.
And the Lord said to me, because I argued with God, I said, God, I would be a fool. I would be a fool to forgive this man. I'm like, what kind of fool are you asking me to be? And God said, well, Rebecca, that makes me the biggest fool in the universe because I forgave humanity. I said,
every moment,
that.
every breathing moment, how much forgiveness and grace he's given us. My Lord, my Lord, my Lord. You know what I love about what you're saying, and first of all, thank you all for being so honest and transparent. I mean, what you're doing right now is helping so many people that are listening, you know, own their own truth and also put themselves in the process to work through whatever issues they're facing. One of the things I talk about in the book, which I love what you're saying, and I've been preaching this since I started promoting the book, which is a woman, first of all, two things. One, a woman cannot do a man's work for him. And a woman can only help a man if he involves her in the process. And so this is definitely, you know, Terry decided to do his work. He can only do that if you can only help him, Rebecca, if he involves you. But what I love about what you did, and I talk about this so much, love a man enough where you hold him accountable and responsible. And sometimes the only thing that we as men are going to understand, and the only motivator for change may ever be your absence. The woman that we love, loving us enough to say, I've got to step away. Doesn't mean we're going to get divorced, but I've got to step away. And sometimes us as men will never get the memo until the woman we love basically says, I love you so much, I can't just let you behave anyway. And so I think it's an interesting point to note your strength in doing that, Rebecca. And then also Terry, you know, the way that her absence really motivated you to do your work because you recognize, hey, I'm going to lose the love of my life. And how important that was to not do that. One of the things that people
all the time, DeVon, that if I had known he would change after I left him, I would have done it 20 years ago.
Oh man, but here's one of the things that I really want you all to address, and you're addressing it a little bit, but I want to go a little deeper here, which is so many people, especially women, when they are dealing with men who may not be changing at the rate they would like. How does a woman, you know, support a man in his process when that process is still the man's process, if that makes sense?
Mm.
Well, there are two things that I find with my spouse. One is that consequences need to be swift and strong. The more we tolerate, the more they'll do.
Oh,
My
Lord have
husband
mercy.
was
Jesus.
yeah, he was a pushy guy. He was used to get overstepping his boundaries a lot, you know, not calling me in advance and just showing up with guests at the house, or, you know, just things like that took for granted my graciousness, you know. And I would be like, and I would try to explain to him, honey, you can't do that, you know, I'm not prepared. And I would try to reason with him as if he didn't know what he was doing. And so now I do things like, well, I won't be here. You know, he'll try to say, well, honey, we're having so-and-so over. Oh, really? Well, I have plans, so you'll have to figure it out. And I let him, you know, handle the consequences of that. I don't allow him to squeeze me into performing in a manner that he expects me to when he disrespects my time or he disrespects my will in a matter. We have this conversation all the time where I'm reading a book or I'm having my prayer or my quiet time, and he'll walk in the room and just start talking to me while I'm doing something. And I'll say, honey, I'm busy. Oh, you busy? You know, he gets all out of joint because he expects me to be available. Because for many years, you know, like with the children, I would stop what I'm doing and yes, what do you need, you know? And so now every time I stick my hand up, like, you're going to respect my time.
Wait a minute, not so fast.
You're going to respect my energy. You're not going to throw things on me. And if you do, you will just be, pardon the French, ass out. I was like, and he started to get really angry. And that's one of the things I learned in my therapy was setting boundaries, and that you're going to face the backlash, because even though he's in therapy, he is going to really hate you for putting your foot down about a lot of things. And I just don't take any shit anymore. I mean, I just don't. Whether, you know, regardless as to what it might be, it could be a small thing or a big thing. If I think he disrespected me in any way, I'm straight up in his face, and I walk away, or I don't show up, or I don't, whatever, you know. If he didn't give me enough notice, I just tell him, well, you're out of luck.
Well, I gotta preface this just because when you gotta understand, I'm very, very driven, and
yes.
it's almost like when I step into a room, the temperature is at 99, and everybody else is comfortable at 69. But I would come in and turn the room up to 99, because everything I'm about was like that. I'm very like, listen, if I was a drug dealer, I would have been Nino Brown.
Right.
I'm just telling
Gonna
you.
be the best.
Listen, I pulled around in Hollywood and ended up where I am.
Well,
you know, I went to, you know, I was just walked on to my football team and went to the NFL. And so you're talking about a mentality for years that was about beating, competition. No one's doing enough. No one's doing. It's like we gotta do this tomorrow. We gotta do this now. We gotta. And I'm gonna tell you something that wears a family out. And
yeah, he cracked the whip all the time. He was like Simon LeGree.
And I would take it as a moral failure. Everything was a moral failure. You know what I mean? When I say, you know, and I tell people all the time, like, my name on my book, Manhood, was really Terry Crews was an idiot. And you have to really, like, the manhood was the nice way. But, man, when I look back and I look at how I even talked to my kids and talked to my wife, it was rude. It was too much.
Obnoxious. It
was big. And so I understand this pushback now. Like, literally, she's like, because I can still get into old habits. Like, oh, yeah, hey, baby. And she's like, I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh yeah,
The
because
tone.
Well,
you
because
you
yeah.
teach people how to treat you.
Well, and
You
I
know?
want to say in response to that, that what was good for the goose wasn't good for the gander. If he was reading a book and I walked in, hey babe, he would be, I am reading. I am doing something. You are interrupting me. And I'd be like, I am your wife and I have the right to interrupt you, you know. So he expected me to be available, but he was never available. He was always, I used to joke that he treated me like his secretary or something, you know, and I would interrupt him and he would act all highfalutin like he was, I used to say, you think you're the king of Siam? I said, you're going to be a king by yourself, you know. And so I started treating him the way he treated me, not out of vengeance, but just so he would see how it felt.
And Terry, were you able to see that? How did that make you feel? Or did that help you change or bring to your awareness things that you might do differently?
But I think, you know, one thing I knew is through my therapy and through what I was learning, was that the problem with me was pride.
Yeah.
And I
So many
had
of us.
to be vulnerable. I had to practice vulnerability. And this is the problem.
Empathy, because he lacked empathy. You know, he couldn't put himself in our shoes. So any mistake we made, it was all judgment. But he made a mistake, it was all grace. And so my kids spill their milk. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I want to finish that comment though.
Sorry, go ahead, Boo.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I don't remember.
You were saying,
yeah.
you know, when you lacking empathy, and you were saying, shoot, right before that, Terry. Oh man.
Yeah.
I was asking you, you know, how that made you. Did that make you change? And when you saw her doing those things to you, did that put a mirror in front of you where you started to see, oh, I see I'm behaving this way?
Yeah. You know, the thing for me was that, you know, I just realized that I really needed to be vulnerable. That's what I was going to say.
Yes, vulnerability.
The vulnerability aspect was one of killing my pride at every step. And the deal is that, you know, for men, that is our issue. I mean, we tend to be manipulated through pride. And with women tend to be manipulated through fear. And I realized that the pride had to be killed, because the more I esteemed myself, the worse I would get. And it's kind of wild, because self-esteem is weird. It can be very, you know, people think self-esteem is a great thing, but what we need really is more other esteem. You know, I mean, we need to esteem everyone. You need to,
That's
you know,
right.
because what's happened is you esteem yourself so much, you're above everybody. And that's not the way it works for me. Now, I had to practice vulnerability. And this is the thing, and this is the way I would practice it, is literally being honest and really telling a lot of very private things that a lot of people could never tell. But it was a thing like, this is the reason I went on Facebook Live to talk about my pornography addiction, was an exercise in vulnerability. Because I knew that there were people out there who were going through the same things. And as long as we remained quiet, nothing could be done about it. And so, and another thing, I found that I couldn't go to a lot of groups, because groups were like, oh, that's Terry Crews. Hey, what's up? You know, and they were, and even this is a weird thing, DeVon. I had counselors who wouldn't tell me the truth.
Yeah.
I had counselors who
because of your celebrity.
Like, oh man, I love your movies. And I was like, yeah, but I need you to tell me, you know, and it was wild, DeVon. I mean, like, they would be hard on her and would be easy on me. And I was like, we would come home and she was like, oh, he's just in love with you, huh? And I was like, oh man, I needed somebody who was going to really speak to me for real, like talk to me and say, hey man, you're off here. You're this here. Because I don't need a yes man. I don't want psychopaths. And what happened is, Facebook and talking publicly became my therapy, because what happened is people tell you the real. Like,
that's right.
Don't like
that's
you
right.
On the internet, they tell you the real. They say you
that's
suck.
Right.
You know, they don't. And I go, wow, okay. okay, this is why it's weird, because that helped ground me. Like, oh, I'm human just like everybody else. Now everybody's talking all this, woo, you so, and it's like, no, man, it's not, that's not the way. So it became my therapy. And the vulnerability issue was we had to talk to all our kids. We had to sit them all down and tell them this was dad's problem. This is what I gave them all copies of my book, and we went through it. It was wild because my 20-year-old a couple of years ago, you know, she literally, my wife found her in the room and she was on the ground in tears. She was reading my own book. And she was like, I didn't know this about Dad. I didn't know this. And she was hurt. And see, that's the stuff that says, this is you, man. Take it. This is you. This is what you did. But it's fixable. It's fixable. If you talk about it, if you go into it, sometimes the only way out is through. And I was like, man, you know, the fact that we can sit here and talk about this stuff now, because I remember there were times, let me tell you, man, there were times I was laying on the ground, laying in the bed, sleep, and I would wake up in the morning, I open my eyes, and she's standing over me. DeVon,
Rebecca, what?
let me tell you something. There were times, and I'm going to be so honest with you.
I did not have a weapon.
No, but listen to me. I'm going to be honest. This happened more than once.
Yeah.
But I thought, this is it. Like, I thought she's going to kill me. I'm being real with you. Can we be real? Can we be real?
Tell the truth.
This was a year. She'd be standing over me, and I didn't know if it was a pot of grits. I didn't know if it was hot boiling water.
Oh, my Lord. Rebecca, why were you standing over him like that?
Listen, and DeVon, you know what? She had a right to be angry. She had a right.
He's asking why. I will tell you, DeVon, there's recovery on both our parts. There's recovery for the victim. And that word has been so betrayed in our culture. Like, I'm not a victim. Well, no, if you've been hurt, you are a victim. What you choose to do is not have a victim mentality. But what happens is the recovery for the victim has to do with betrayal and loss of trust and, emotional trauma, PTSD. It's like going through war, going through a loss of a loved one. You don't sleep, you don't eat. So I would wake up in the middle of the night and just walk around and eat and pray and talk. And there are times I'd just be looking at him like talking to God, like, are you for real, God? Is this guy telling me the truth? I made him take a lie detector.
Yep.
The place we
went.
We did everything. We did it all, man.
The therapist
wow, polygraph that.
Yeah, the therapists that we went to, they deal with sex offenders. They deal with high-profile people who sin sexually, even rapists and child molesters. So they've dealt with from the worst to the best and everything in between. Right. And they told me, you don't have to trust him, Rebecca. You don't have to trust him. You don't have to believe nothing he says. If you have any question about what he's doing, and he won't let you have they told me, they said, if he balks about any transparency, walk. They said, if he won't let you check his phone, walk. If he won't
wait, I got to interject real here just because Instagram's going to cut us off in like 10 seconds. I'm going to end this. I'm going to call you, I'm going to go live again and just come back in here. We got to finish this piece right here. Okay. Here we go. Before they cut us off. All right, y'all. Part 2. Here we go. Man, are y'all listening to this? Whoa.
All right.
Whoa. Okay. We are back. Wait a minute. Okay. So you had him do a polygraph test.
I did.
And what did you want to, what was the truth that you were not trusting?
Well, one of the things that happens with disclosure, and this is what we call disclosure, is when they basically tell you all the stuff they've done, okay? One of the things that happens is addicts will lie. They'll withhold the truth. They'll tell you they did this, but then they don't tell you everything. And so you kind of new things keep coming out, right? And so one of the things the counselors ask you to do is be completely transparent, like anything you remember, tell it, you know. Don't leave out that you've got a girlfriend in Texas who has a kid. Don't leave out that, you know what I'm saying? Like for there to be real healing, you got to tell everything.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not every detail, but you need to tell everything. You can't, you know, sugarcoat, you know, oh, I have this girlfriend in Florida and I'm paying for a condo. Don't hide that. I mean, you know, you've got to let it all come out. And I had this doubt about whether or not everything he had told me was really true. And I just, you know, because when you've been married to someone for 20 years and you find out this kind of horrible dark secret that they're like Jekyll and Hyde, you don't know what you believe, you know, at all. You don't trust anybody. You don't trust anything. You don't trust yourself. And they had told me, they said, you know, if you feel the need to, make him take a polygraph. And if he balks about it, then you have your answer, you know. And my husband, bless his heart, any question I asked him, he answered. I had the passcodes to his phone. We had a program on all his devices called Covenant Eyes, which allowed me to see wherever he went.
Covenant Eyes, wow.
Covenant Eyes. It's an awesome program. I was able to find my iPhone. So if he told me he was a certain place, I could check and see where he was to verify. I didn't have to just trust him. And they said, these are ways for him to be accountable to you in a real-time way. You don't have to take him at his word. So I went and found a high-profile polygraph guy in New York City, because we were living in New York at the time. I prayed about it. I felt drawn to this gentleman who had worked with the FBI and NYPD. And I told my husband, you're taking a polygraph today. He's like, what? I said, yep. And the guy comes to the house, straps him up.
Wait. Hold on. Just time out. You on the fly, unannounced. Yeah. Hey, babe, you're taking a polygraph today. And Terry, you just say, okay. Were you like, okay, baby, wait, you're taking this too far? Like, what was your reaction in that moment?
You know, well, at first, I have to say, I was kind of like, are we really gonna do this? You know, I had to make sure. You know, I mean, it was real. Like, I wasn't like, yippee. Because my thing was, what if they get it wrong? You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, but then I knew. I said, man, you know, I had to do whatever made her feel and made her trust me. You know, this stuff is earned. Trust is not just given; it's earned.
That's right.
And I was like, let's do it. Let's do it.
And you know what is so funny, DeVon, is the gentleman did the test with him. And I had to drive the man back to the train because we were living in Connecticut and he had come over on the train. So I'm driving him to the train and he hands me an envelope. And he says, here's all the answers. He said, but I can tell you, Mrs. Cruz, your husband is telling you the truth. And I just looked at him shocked. He said,
wow.
He said, I've been doing this for 35 years and I know when people are lying. Before they even strap up, I know if they're lying. Because there's a way they start to behave when they're not telling the truth. And he said, I believe your husband is telling you the truth. And he said, I'm a Christian man. He says, I'm a Christian man. And I know that with God, he can overcome any problems he's having and become a better man. And I think you should trust him. So I wave him off and I drive home like, oh my God.
I had to thank that polygraph man.
I came home. I drove back home with that envelope. I handed it to my husband. I said, you passed. And we both just cried. We just cried. And, you know, I hugged him and kissed him and I said, thank you. And he said, thank you. That's what I need. You just put me through it.
I did.
But I share that only because what my husband's saying is true. In many instances, pastors and counselors, other men, were a little easy on him. They were over accommodating. They were unable to be forthwith with him. In part due to the stature, you know, the money, and then just like bro code, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I did not get when we went to this place in Phoenix was any of that crap. They did not pull punches with my spouse because they were dealing with the highest profile and the lowest criminals, like everything in between. They could not tolerate BS, and they knew it when they heard it, you know?
Yeah.
Because they were interested in helping you, you know?
But that's the thing. We have to have accountability and responsibility. And as men, we respond to that, you know, and I talk about this in the book that, you know, especially when it comes to the woman in our life, this is not always a comfortable truth, but it is. It's like sometimes we want to know where the boundary is. And if the woman sometimes does not draw the boundary, inadvertently, we're kind of like, well, you know, you won't even hold us accountable. And especially when it comes to other men, it's like, well, wait, I can just do anything, and you're just going to co-sign that and say, oh, that's good. You know, come on now. Like, and what it does is sometimes it clarifies, you know, who should be in our life and who shouldn't. One of the things that I wanted to just read this little passage from the book, because when you talked about the polygraph test, it is very much of what I put in the book here, because when someone violates trust in a relationship or a marriage, the person by which the trust has been violated. So if I violate the trust in a marriage, I don't get to dictate the terms by which that trust is regained.
Yes.
And so what I love about this is that, you know, Rebecca, you're saying, hey, listen, Terry, you violated the trust, and here's what I need you to do in order to help me regain trust. And I love, Terry, the fact that you did not resist it. You acknowledged it. And even though it may not have been what you wanted to go through, you loved your wife so much, and you love your wife so much that you were willing to go through the process that she needed you to go through to repair that trust, which is so important. Because I get so many people that come to me and they say, how many more times do I have to forgive? I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'm trying to make it up to her. And my response is always, you have to say I'm sorry as much as she needs you to, because it's her process. It's her process. And when you commit to it and submit to it, that's the only way she may ever heal from what you did. I want to read this real quick. This is on page 256 of the Truth About Men. This is I interviewed a doctor, and this is what she said. She said that she's an advocate of an incredible tool called radical honesty. Going forward, the couple have to renew their bond in a way that includes radical honesty. This is for couples where there's been cheating and the trust has been violated. And she says, which is based on Peggy Vaughn's work. That means I will tell you every time I feel an attraction, that cocaine rush to somebody outside the marriage. I will tell you immediately, because it's secrecy that fuels affairs. It's combustible, but the minute they share, but the minute they share the attraction with their spouse, it loses its power. You start to notice flaws in the person you were attracted to. If you don't engage in radical honesty, you will continue to idealize the affair partner, and things grow in secrecy. I know this is a bold and daring practice. I'm sure most can't imagine going home and telling their spouse, baby, I have to tell you about the woman I saw at the gym today. This might sound extreme, but extreme problems calls for extreme measures. Dr. Springer uses this in her own marriage. The reason why I read that is because this idea of radical honesty, even if it's not talking about someone you're attracted to, reference to what you all do is like, okay, I got to tell you the truth. I got to be honest with you. I have to work at rebuilding the trust. And if that means I tell you everything that you need to know, or that you may not even want to know, but I still got to tell you, it's what keeps the marriage strong. And so many people, whenever I say this, they're like, you're crazy. You can't be 100% honest with your spouse. What do you say to that, to people who challenge the idea of this type of radical honesty that you all practice?
Yeah, what was wild is we went out to dinner right after we went with a very famous couple. I mean, on the stellar level,
like a list couple that we were close
to. And and I was like, you know, I was addicted to porn and this, and we're going through it, and they just froze up, like, okay. And let me tell you something. The guy pulled me to the side. He said, "What are you doing, man? What are you doing?" And I went, "Hey, man, what are you?" I was like, "I'm just telling you what happened, man." He was like, dude, that's man code, man. That's man code. What you do? You broke man code. Why are you even talking about that stuff, man? You don't never tell him nothing. And I said, you know what? I said, then I'm not a man. If that's what your definition of manhood is, I'm done. And let me tell you, we didn't hang anymore. And this is the thing with me right now, DeVon, is that I tend to split the room right down the middle right now. It's almost like lightning, because there are people who are attracted and there are people who are repelled. And especially since, you know, one thing is when you've been a toxic man, you see toxicity everywhere.
Like that.
And what happened to me in 2017 with my agent, with the head of the movie department at William Morris Endeavor. He wasn't my agent, but he was part of the agency. And this guy comes over to me, and I don't know what he's on. He wasn't drunk, but he was on something, and gropes my genitals. I back up, pull his arms away, and push him back, and the whole thing. And I'm going, "What are you doing?" And she was right there. This is as toxic as it comes. And then they basically told me, like, "Hey, man, you know, he's bigger than you. He's richer than you. He's that guy." And I mean, I told everybody the next day. But they treated me, and listen, I paid this agency millions of dollars, and they literally looked at me like, "Hey, man, you know what? Big dog, you little dog."
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. And I was like, this is the stuff we're talking about, these abuses of power, this kind of thing, this man code. Don't say nothing.
Don't say nothing. And it's like, that's why
done.
we're in the trouble we are in now, is because we don't say anything. We have this ridiculous code. It doesn't make us better. It only hurts the very things we profess to love, which is our families, our wives, our communities, our professions. And if we as men do not change, we are going to continue to suffer the devastation that is happening in our community. And that we are the ones. And that's why I wanted to write this book, because and the reason why you have written your book and why you all do what you do, and it's an inspiration to me, is because we got to change. At what point do we say, what type of man do we want to be? Do we want to be a man that inflicts pain or a man that heals pain? Because we got to do our work. And too often we're putting the work at the foot of women. Sorry, you have to just deal with it. Sorry, boys will be boys. So I completely agree that we have to, you know, do what we can to break the man code. The real man code should be, I'm gonna be honest. The real man code should be, nobody's got it figured out. We struggle. Okay, that's DeVon, the real man code.
DeVon, this is why I worked all day, and all I could think about was talking to you tonight.
Wow.
I'm telling you, 12-hour day, and I was like, I cannot wait to get back here and talk to you, because this is so refreshing. It's so needed. This is like water to my soul, to have another man to talk to about these issues without being joked about, without being, you know, told to be quiet, told to be like, "Oh man, that ain't cool," told to be, you're weak for even mentioning it.
Yes.
I mean, this is, you know what? In fact, vulnerability is true strength. It's true courage. It takes so much courage to actually tell, "Hey man, I'm not doing well today." You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, man, first of all, and I got to say this, as Black men, there's a fantasy of us being able to just jump through the roof and dunk on everybody, and all while singing a song and driving off in the Benz and doing whatever, and everything goes well. But let me tell you, the real story is that we don't talk enough. We're not vulnerable. We're not willing. And as Black men, we fell in love with a fantasy that's not true. And we are dying by the hundreds and thousands, if not millions. And I'm telling you, I'm like, please, please we need to talk about all these issues. Because this is the thing, when I came out about my assault, you know how many men came forward about the fact that they were assaulted? They were like, wait, and let me tell you something. You can't be more manly than me.
Right.
You can't. It's impossible. I'm trying to tell you. It's like, hey, Rebecca has seen me throw men over her head. You know what I mean? I have been in the NFL. I have done all the things you talk about. I've been in the big action movies. I've been at the tops of all these things that everyone puts at the pinnacle of manhood. And it's empty. It's empty. And they're dying by the million up there. All these guys that were superstars in the NFL, let me tell you something, man. There's depression, there's the suicide, there's all kind, and then I go into Hollywood and I see all this other stuff, and I'm going, hey man, this is not true. The stories that are being told are not factual. And I'm here to say, and listen, let me be the guinea pig. I'm like, yo, I'm going to bust the bubble. I don't care about
Yeah.
my image. There is no image. One guy
Right.
even told me, he said, hey, man, is it hard to keep your image up? I said, there is no image. There is no image.
Right. Right. And this, but what I love what you're saying, you know, Terry, is that this idea, it's that's all it is. It's an idea and an ideal that by definition is not real. And so what happens though, and why what you're doing is so brave, and you know why what I'm trying to do is, you know, do the same thing you're doing. We're all doing a similar thing, which is to change this, which is this. Whenever we don't meet that ideal, what happens? Usually we're met with some form of violence. So you're weak. Don't cry.
Yep.
What's wrong with you?
Yep.
Man up. So and what's so brave about your continued courage to speak about this is literally we as the world are seeing that there is this box that we put manhood in, and whenever we don't fit or whenever we speak out against it, what happens? We're met with violence. That's not always a physical violence. What we're seeing with you, you know, it's a verbal violence. It's a, oh, if you were a real man, you would have done this. Well, what does that mean? That so we're seeing it. If we can just step back, we're seeing literally the problem that is playing itself right out in front of our eyes, which is this box is breaking us because no man fits what's in the box. And as men, we have to do a better job not to inflict the same violence on others as that was inflicted on us. Because growing up, it was like, oh, stop crying. You're a wimp. Don't be a sissy. So what do? We try to subscribe to the box, which is what you're talking about, and none of us fit it. Don't matter how many women you sleep with. Don't matter how many women you date. Doesn't matter how much money you make. Doesn't matter what your title is. If there's an emptiness internally, there's nothing external that can fill that. And so, you know, it's so important that, you know, the work that you're doing, the work that Rebecca's doing, the work that I'm aspiring to do as we all partner together, because we have to change it. Why? Because the culture is dying because of it. We as men are literally, it's almost like a cultural genocide that we are facilitating by not taking a stand to say, you know what, hey, listen, I tried to be like you're saying, I tried to subscribe to this man, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But let me tell you what does work. The love of my wife, being transparent, communicating, being honest, being vulnerable. All the things we say don't make up a man are the very things that do make up a man. And so, you know, you all, I mean, listen, it's almost 11:30. I know you've been working all night. I'm not going to take advantage. We could do part 2 and 3 and all that. So I'm not going to do that. I know you got work tomorrow.
We got to keep doing this.
We have to. We have to. I mean, I just feel so compelled, even beyond, you know, my book, which, you know, I'm passionate about. This work is so important. And look who just came in before we get up, baby. Hey, come say hi.
I'm watching downstairs.
Hey.
We've been in here for an hour and a half.
No, I've been watching downstairs. I've been watching all of it.
Amazing, right?
Amazing.
I mean, aren't they amazing?
Yeah, we love you guys.
Yeah, love you so much.
Love you guys. Love you guys.
You all are just so strong. You are an inspiration to us and so many other people around the world. We just want you to know that I love it. We're covering you in prayer, and please keep going. We need you. Please, please. You know, I mean, seriously, it's like what you're doing. It's your legacy. Well, people will honestly, Terry and Rebecca, people won't eat when you're done. When God's done with what you're doing, your legacy, people will be like, "Oh, he was in movies too.
Amen.
She sang too, really?"
Amen.
The entertainment will be the footnote to the legacy.
Amen.
That's right.
What you're doing to change the culture will be the legacy.
I believe it.
Thus saith the Lord. So just keep going. And we're with you every step of the way. And thank you so much for being with us as we embark on this journey. It hasn't been easy. The haters have already come. But you know what? We're going to tell the truth, because the truth is going to set us free.
Amen.
Always. Love you guys.
Man, we love you.
We love you guys too.
We love you so much.
Good. Thank you for
everything. And the book is awesome. Go get the book. If you don't have this book, go get Yes. It's so the
men and women
truth
and
about
your
men.
teenagers
The
and
truth
For the young
about
people.
men.
Yes. For
Incredible.
Thank you.
Yes.
You
Thank
telling
you.
it for real, man. I love you, brother. I love
Man.
you. Thank you so much for your
Love you
truthfulness.
back.
Thank you.
Love you back.
Love you,
And y'all
guys.
get some
Love
rest.
you
We
guys.
can't wait to see you soon.
All right.
All righty.
God bless
God
you.
bless, guys.
God bless you
God bless
too.
you too. Good night.
Good night.